My name's Karl Murphy. I'm the CEO and founder at Get Spiffy, and this is another episode of the Mobile Service Playbook, where we interview leaders in fixed operations in the automotive space who are launching and operating mobile businesses of all sizes. And today we're proud to have one of our new customers, Duval Ford from Jacksonville, Florida. And today we're joined by um, Daniel Harris and Richard Jordan from Duval Ford. Welcome, fellas.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, great. Hey, um, Richard, a lot of our listeners, are in various places in their career paths in the automotive space. I was wondering if you and Daniel could just tell us, like, what your job is at Duval Ford today, and then just sort of briefly, like, how'd you get there over the last 5, 10, 15 years? Like, what's your career path in automotive? It's something that's like super interesting to our listeners.
Okay, so I'll start. I'm the director of fixed operations, which is basically responsible for everything parts and service in the dealership. It's a I've been in this for 42 years now. I had no vision when I started in this dealership. I started here at Duval Ford. Started as a technician, and people ask me all the time, how did you get here? And I say all the time, I'm no smarter than anybody sitting in any of these offices or on this service drive than anybody else. I just feel like I had more hard work, determination, and I could outwork them. They could do it probably better in some cases, but they couldn't last as long as I could. So, with that said, I've always had we call it today a servant's heart, and I've always cared about helping people. And I think it's suffice to say that when you have a desire to help, you will go places and people appreciate you.
Yeah, that's exciting. I think we're aligned in that. I started as a sales rep, and my principles of success have been come in early, leave late, work hard, and take care of customers. It's interesting. I shared that if I have a 26-year-old daughter, and she's been at work for 2 years, and there was all this drama at her company, as you can imagine in companies. And I said, avoid the drama, show up early, leave late, and if you don't know what to do, go take care of a customer and make them more successful. And she was promoted twice in 18 months with that attitude, and half the team quit. And it's interesting as a I would say, Richard, you and I would be described as more mature. Um, and it's just like such a success, simple success principles that I think get lost in all the noise in the world today. So thanks for sharing that. I think it's good advice, if you're a new technician in the world out there. Dan, how about you? How'd you end up where you are?
Oh, buddy, you want a long story?
You got 5 minutes.
So for most of my working career, did heavy equipment, welding, fabrication, repair. Um, Owned and operated a heavy equipment mobile service company.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Nice.
and in 2016, I believe, something like that. Looking back now, it's the best thing that ever happened to me. But a few years prior to that, I went to work for my biggest client of the time. Not the best time in the economy. I went into business in 2007. Probably the worst time I could ever done that. And just struggling through that for 4 or 5 years. One of my biggest clients, just said, "Why don't you just come and just hang it up, come work for me, enjoy a nice paycheck." It's been a long time since you had a steady one of those, and benefits, all that stuff. So went that route. That company 5 years later got bought out by a big um, worldwide company, and they just simply didn't want the liability of um, doing their own crane and hydraulic repair. It was too much liability. They wanted to outsource all that and outsource that liability on vendors. So getting back to the worst day of my life, that looking back shaped a lot of what got me here. I'll never forget the day sitting at Discount Tire in St. Augustine, State Road 16. I just bought a brand new Super Duty and got the phone call. It was short and sweet. We no longer need your services. And I was like, what? So just kind of, it was hard backbreaking in the heat of Florida, work in the sun all day, the worst scenario,
Yeah.
hands above your head, hydraulic oil running down your arms, greasy, mosquito landing on your face.
Yeah.
That was every day. So I just took the opportunity to kind of was like, well, I don't, it's not like I just go get this kind of job somewhere else. Actually walked into another dealer. I'm gonna try not to let my eyes sweat a little bit too much here. I don't know how much Mr. Jordan even knows how much I appreciate this moment, but I was interviewed by Richard. He hired me, and very quickly found out that he was different than anybody I'd ever worked for. He about a year later came back to Duval Ford. He was on a short hiatus. And long story short, I followed him back as a technician. Through that, he, came to me, it wasn't long, like, hey, do you think you could lead the charge in our used car department? Kind of took a leadership role in that. And then he's, a few months go by, you think you can do that and quick lanes? I'm like, yeah, I can do it. And then just mentoring me of the next steps, coming, whatever the conversation was. I think you're built for more. I think I see, a service manager type role in your future, but you got to write service, that's the next step. So I've always trusted him, to sometimes it was taking a little step back financially, but hey, if you think that's going to get me where I want to go, let's go. After that, I wrote service for a while. Then I went and ran our accessory department for a little over a year. That's a long story of how, but that transitioned to me and going into finance. So jumped over on the sales side of the business, spent a few years in finance, then was a finance manager, and then ended up as a platform finance director. We had 5 stores at the time. And then this Ford Pro Elite thing came along, which is my now title is Ford Pro Elite Service Manager, which for those that don't know is a set of standalone service facility for fleet and commercial customers. So took this role in October of 25. Which was really cool for me, just going full circle back to the heavy equipment, all that stuff. No matter what step I took, I always felt that, man, like most of my career is going to waste. I can never shake that feeling, even in finance. Like I kept thinking like that they're messing up my paycheck. This is crazy. They're paying me this much money to do this in the air conditioning all day. But the money was there. I just didn't have like a passion for it. I learned, that's when I learned that money wasn't everything. And still to this day made way more money doing that than I do now. But my heart just wasn't in it. And it just felt like, so much was going to waste. So having this opportunity to kind of bring it all full circle. And then as February this year, was also asked to, hey, we think you should also take over mobile as well, which it then really comes full circle, right? Because it's a space that I'm familiar with. So, and so here we are today. So it's a cool story for me because I'm speaking from, fact when I tell people, we have these new hire orientations for our new hire class every 2 weeks. And, we talk about like, you can make this a career, whether you're a valet or whatever. And I'm proud to be proof of that. I just work hard and everybody knows I ain't afraid to try something else. And that's probably my biggest downfall is for a long time, I just never could really felt like I was in the right spot. So I was kind of always looking toward what's the next step. And that was almost a curse for a while. Like, man, am I never going to shake? It's nothing ever good enough for me, but it's just been really cool. Like that's completely gone. I'm finally like, I'm locked in. It all makes sense now. So, just seeing God's plan come to full circle, man, has been really, really awesome. So
It, Dude, congratulations. That's an awesome story. I see why you and Addison are like fast friends because Addison's story is very similar. Like if you took the bullet points and changed the names and the jobs and the timeline, it's like same sort of trajectory. Um, and the same for me. I look, I I started my car wash business in 2003, and we had to power through. We had we had bought three pieces of land in 2006 to expand our car wash business. We had two car washes. We wanted to go to five. It was very ambitious. And then global financial crisis shows up and no one wanted to loan me money, but I had all this debt and problems and all this other stuff. And so I completely empathize with the trajectory of your mobile business and in the resilience that you know, those again, you know, the resilience of those painful experiences were like, hey, I no longer have a job, or I come home on Friday night and I thought I was going to make X amount of dollars, and there's half of that in the checking account. And I got to explain that to my family, and what am I going to do on Monday? And I just those things are so powerful for people. And I think, again, I think we have some young technicians who listen to this. It's just, you know, associate with good people, right, Richard? Um, Find an industry you like, right? I mean, you've basically been in the automotive industry for your whole career, but then you move here, there, finance, sales, maintenance, start a business. God, the guys, some of the best employees, some of the best team members we have started businesses. In fact, one of the guys at Adam's team or on Addison's team is a guy Adam Major who started a mobile business and got really to the same place you were. And instead of joining Duval Ford, he joined Get Spiffy, and he's still here. And he's just so impactful for our business. And so, thanks for sharing the story. And if you're out there listening, like those are two career paths in automotive that are hyper successful. And you know, if you're you know, if you're dirty, covered in hydraulic fluid, and there's not enough money in your bank account on Friday night, you know, call these guys up. They've been there, and there's a path out of it, right? It's like hard work and good people, and just powering through it. So
yeah,
thank
and for
you.
me, I'm just looking back really thankful. I have a lot of got people that work for me now that I think that I know that some of them believe that like that's the goal, right? The end all be all. I just want a shop of my own and all that stuff. And I probably would feel that way myself if I didn't experience it so young, and not that I'm scared. I mean, Richard can attest, I'm not really scared to take a risk and try something new, but I found out, and there's a lot of people that it's, great for. Maybe it just wasn't for me, but there's a lot, you know, there's so much that goes into that you have no idea
Yeah.
until you're in it, right? And now that like that's not even. I've had multiple people like come to me about partnering with stuff, and I don't care how small it is. I'm just like I'm not your guy. I'm not the network target, the network marketing target. I can promise you that because I don't want anything to do with the headache of any of it.
Yeah. The thing that's helped me as as I said to Richard, a more mature adult, um, is so a couple of, having kids like really helps because you have to go, they look at you and your kids are like so perceptive about your behavior. And then you have to go explain the things you did in your life. And, sometimes like, you're insanely proud of them. And then sometimes you're like, I'm not particularly proud of that. Sometimes you're embarrassed by it. Right. And I was talking to one of my kids about career decisions. And I'm like, look, first, you can't define your life success around your career. I said, if you do that, you're going to chew up humans on trying to make it better, and you're going to ultimately be unhappy. And when you find people who are at the pinnacle of their career and they have no friends and they're divorced, and their kids hate them, you know, they optimize for their career and not like the other stuff that's important in your life, right? Whether it's family, faith, impact in your community. There's other things that are like ultimately more important, but you really have to like go from 20 to 30 to 40 to really have some ups and downs and really appreciate that. And again, it really helped my child. Like, you need to go run hard at work, and that's important. And there's a scorecard there, and there's promotions and money and all that sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, like, when you come home on Friday night, like, is there somebody there who hugs you, and do you feel like the community likes you, and all those sorts of things. Um, and the reality is, in at 20 or 30, you just don't. I did not understand this, and I did not have the patience to really feel that way. If you do the right things for yourself around what's important in your family, in your faith, in your community, um, the other stuff all falls into place. You know, Addison could tell you 20 stories about how we took care of people in the company. It was expensive or painful, or like, you know, HR and the attorney say it's a bad idea. Like, the kid made a mistake, give him a second chance. I was 25 and did something stupid, and someone gave me a second chance. Um, I remember I was in the long, long time ago, last century. I was in the army, and um, the boss, the colonel, um, brought all the young officers into the mess hall. It was just the lieutenants. He's like, one of you got a DUI this weekend. It evaporated on Saturday when I went to talk to the sheriff about how this person is going to be a general officer and we need to give them a second chance. And it evaporated, right? Lieutenant Colonel goes, talks to sheriff, like, the DUI just went away. Now, great, this is like 1993. And so things are a little different then. And then, he's like, look, he got a second chance. This is a leadership lesson. You need to give people second chances. This is hard to do. He goes, I don't do this every weekend. I can't, I have to run a tight ship. We have very high standards. We don't give anyone, you can't murder people and get away with it. But there was a second chance for the person. And that loyalty and that hard work and all that stuff circles around. And again, it's just like good people, the right goals, missions, and all sort of stuff. It just accelerates over time. Um, so Dan, super thankful for sharing that story. I think it's so impactful for young folks who are listening. Hey, let's talk about the mobile business. So Richard, you had a mobile business before Dan became the guy running it. Tell us about how you thought about launching it, what your goals were, the challenges, et cetera. Just talk a little bit about that for the audience.
Sure. So we honestly got into the mobile business before the mobile business was cool, so to speak. And we did it out of pure necessity. We had to do it. We landed a huge contract, which we still have today, with the local electric utility. And part of their requirements, you have to have some mobile vans. You have to come service us on our terms. So that's kind of how it started. And we literally went and bought a couple vehicles and upfitted them ourselves. And we had a different guy at that point in time in our fold, and he kind of put it all together. But again, in short, it was done because we had to. We didn't have a plan. We had a plan to go get that business, and lo and behold, we won the contract. So now it's go time, boys. And really, up until our current general manager got to the store, we weren't doing it to the scale we're doing it now. We were in the mobile business. Ford came out with their program, and we added a couple more mobile units. And then until Will got here, and I credit Will because Will's bold. Will, if there's something that can be done and we can make money at it, he doesn't pause to look at. And I should say, Daniel will agree with this, we are blessed that we work for a company, a private cap company, a family-owned store that gives us the autonomy to go do whatever it is to protect his investment and make him money. So that is, as I'll talk back a little bit, when you talk about the things we just spoke of, second chances, leadership matters. And again, you can work for companies, and we all have, that you're a number on a ledger, so to speak. You're not a person, and that's what's super critical about, or super cool, I'll say, about, and critical about working for a company that gives your leadership the ability to mentor people and to do things like second chances, because there's so many companies out there that they don't look at the people side of it. They look at the number side of it, and that can cause as a leader, that can sway your decision making. That can make you make decisions that you probably wouldn't make. And I would tell you today, in some cases, I make decisions that I know are not right for the company, but I have the people side of it, the servant's heart side of it, the understanding that, like you, and I think we do get that with age, that I just love to help people. I love help, and do we win every time? No. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes we invest more in the person than they're investing in themselves, and those are the lessons we hopefully learn from and take in. But that also doesn't cause us to become polarized, if you will, to not help the next person that may need some help. So, but back to your question, yeah, we got in because we had to, and then I guess it's Daniel. What's it been? 18 months ago now, maybe 12 months ago, probably 18 months ago, that we really just poured into it, and that's when we started to grow our mobile fleet, and we were still, as we grew the vans, I would say, as we grew the vans, we really still didn't have a solid plan. We weren't looking at it from the perspective of what it could be. We were just still kind of going through the motions, if that makes sense to you. But kept pushing and kept pushing, kept growing and kept growing. And as I said earlier, the game changer, two things, two key points is, one, we brought Daniel into the fold of the mobile side of it. And two, we, as you know, recently we brought your company into it, and that's been a game changer for us.
Yeah. So a couple things for the audience. So summarizing, mobile success is about, one, leadership commitment, two, great people, three, like a strategy. The software, like, I'm selling my book. The software just takes those three things and it automates it and it makes it better. But if you don't have a good leader who's committed, and leadership, like, the owner, the GM, the director, the team, the coordinator, like the stack of leadership, not just like one person. You need the leadership, you need the strategy. Like in your case, hey, we got a big fleet business. We need to go. They said we need trucks. They just changed our strategy. Like you can say, I don't want the fleet business. And so we got to go solve the customer problem, right? And again, customer-centric decisions always seem to work out well. Like it's very hard to find, I did something for my customer that was a bad idea, right? It's very rare that happens. Speaking from my, painful decades of business, right? And then there's like, hey, I need strategy and tactics to get it done. And the software really, we show up in places and it's like great people, spreadsheets, whiteboards, sticky notes. I was not in your dealership. I was in a different dealership, and they have 4 mobile coordinators running a business sort of like yours, a scale of similar, and it's there's a whiteboard with a calendar, trucks going to different locations on a whiteboard, sticky notes moving around, and it's like they're getting it done. It's just hard, right? And it's hard to like scale it and that sort of thing. And so again, success is about leadership commitment, strategy, and then some tools to automate that and help you scale it. So thanks for sharing that. So Richard, you started with fleet. What's your fleet consumer mix today, like at a percentage basis? Are you doing any consumer?
Oh, tons of consumer. And Daniel can answer that question better than I can. And I think I know the consumer side of our business has started to really take off because of the software piece of it, because you just talked about it. We had vehicles crossing paths, a lot of windshield drive time, and a lot less work time, which diminishes the capacity ability. So with the software side of it, we're able to maximize the calendar day and get more. So that allows us to book more of the consumer business. And along the way, I should say that when we opened Ford Pro Elite with great intentionality, we took our best performers off our retail drive and put back there because, we know we can take a commercial client that has, 2, 5, 10, 20, 50, 100 vehicles, and we can screw that up and we can lose 2, 5, 10, 100 vehicles. Whereas a retail client, we can screw something up and we can lose that client. And again, I'll go back and say we're as human as anybody. We make mistakes. The autonomy we have, without question, is if we screw it up or we make a mistake, we have full autonomy at any level to take great care of a client. It's not about the dollar; it's about the client. To your point, so with moving. With that in mind, we push all of our commercial clients to our Ford Pro Elite, and with great intentionality, when our phone rings, we meet the customer on their terms. So we ask the question, would you like us to come to you in a mobile visit? And a lot of clients, it's still fairly new, so to speak, but the average client, in fact, he's one of my best friends. He called me the other day and said, hey, I need to get both my truck service. Can they do them at the same time? That'll save me a trip charge. I said, but there is no trip charge. He's like, oh, there's not. I'm like, no. He's like, okay, well, I'll do them both anyway. I'm like, absolutely, we do them both anyway. But so back to the point is, when our phone rings, we want to meet the customer in where they want to be met at. We want to do business with them on their terms. So we offer mobile service, and then we'll drop back and say, okay, if you don't want to do it mobile, we'd love to pick it up and deliver it for you. And if you don't want to do that, you're certainly welcome to bring it to the store. And then we're not where we need to be here, but when the phone rings or when we make an outbound phone call, if it's something that can be done mobily, if it be it a recall or anything, we want to try to always do it mobile for the other side of it, because then we have capacity issues at these stores. We only have so many stalls. So we want to maximize the capacity. In a perfect world, we all know this, we'd rather have heavy repair work here in this building and let mobile do all of that retail oil changes and recalls and anything, quite frankly, that can be done on the mobile outside the store in a mobile environment.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question. This comes up a lot in customers, our customers who are contemplating mobile or have just started, and they sort of like they dip their toe in the water of mobile. They have one van and they're trying to figure it out. How much of what you're doing in your shop as a percentage could you do mobily today? What percentage of that do you think that is?
I'm gonna ask Daniel for that. I would tell you probably a good 35 or 40% of it. I think it's a higher number than we anticipate. I have, as we all do, we have great friends in the mobile business. In these Ford stores, we have a huge network. We unlike the sales side of our business, and I don't know if I should say this or not, but our sales departments don't do a good job of communicating. It's almost like they're scared if they communicate very well, someone might sell a car that they could have sold. In service, we're really and truly transparent. We want to help each other at every time we can, and we share numbers and share experiences and whatnot. But I lost my train of thought there. What was we talking about?
We're talking about the percentage of, so you said like about 40% of your op codes in the shop you could do mobily.
Yeah. I know where I was going. So one of my buddies is his mobile team will go, and I think we're there now. Daniel can correct me if I'm wrong, but he's got guys that'll go to a client's house and take the dash out of a car, do an AC evaporator in their driveway. And initially we've been like, well, that's voodoo. We would never do that. But it's now, I think we're pretty close to, and I know where Daniel's head is. Daniel's like, if it can be done, and he knows, that's one of the nice things about his experience. He was a mobile guy. So it's not about, in a lot of cases, not can you do it, is do you want to do it? And that's up to us to drive that.
Yeah. So Dan, what's your thoughts on that?
I am actually kind of finding out that maybe, because that was my approach. How do we do more? But going through enough, whether it be poor customer experiences or something like that, I'm now, haven't even had this conversation with Richard, but find myself pulling back or thinking, maybe we should just be more focused on the light repairs and maintenance. And now the caveat is, the fleet customer that's, 4+ hours away, we're gonna send a special technician, and to stretch that. Um, but the day to day, I, you know, think that the focus going forward is not trying to be everything to everyone. And I'm learning the power of saying no, or maybe not no, but like, no, that needs to come back to the shop. Um, I'm thinking that maybe the juice isn't worth the squeeze of pushing those limits. Like I said, there's the exceptions to it, right? But the daily, I think you're finding, because then you're looking at, how do I make a mobile tech, um, how do I equip him to have those skills, or how do I pull a good technician out of a controlled environment and making a mobile tech? I don't know that really is the answer. So I'm kind of, initially I wanted to do it all in the field. But since we've, you know, just taken a different look at it, and we can touch a lot more people and make a lot more of an impact if we just stay in our lane. Um, and I want to do more. I think there's more. My focus is, what other mobile things are we not doing? And these are just the things that I wake up in the middle of the night every night thinking about. Like, I woke up the other night, I'm like, why don't I hire a windshield guy?
Yeah.
Why am I paying a vendor every day, all day, every day to come do windshields? There's reasons why we do, and there's excuses and all that stuff. But I'm like, we do these different programs and stuff like that to bring in vendors that buy windshields from us and all that stuff. And I'm like, could I give a better customer experience if I just hired a windshield guy, controlled everything, controlled the cost? Why don't we do mobile detail? That's been a big thing for me. Like, our dealership specifically, we have a third party on site, because it's so much. I think once upon a time we had our own internal detail department. Um, and I'm not even thinking about going internal with our detail department. That's not even if my the guy that owns a detail place heard me talking about this, he'd be like, "Whoa, I'm not even talking about taking work from him. I'm talking, you just start think all the fleets I come in contact with. We have some big nationwide fleet accounts that I was just at one yesterday, and I look over, my wife actually works there, and her car's getting detailed, and they're lined up. And I'm like, what? First of all, it's like, who's paying for that? But, and how much is that detail about to cost me? But they're lined up. And then I talked to the general manager, and she's like, I've been asking you if y'all do mobile detail. And she has. And I'm like, I've always said no, but why? Why don't we do mobile details? Why don't we, like I said, is there an opportunity in the windshield business? Like, all these things that are mobile businesses that customers utilize today that we have to sub out, or, and that you don't have control of the customer experience. Then we're only as good as the windshield vendor we sent out, or, you know,
Right.
so that's kind of my thought, is how can we do more mobile stuff, and increase that volume instead of trying to make repairs that should be done in a controlled environment mobile.
Yeah. So um, I have like 2 more hours of questions based on just what you've said, Dan. So um, I will holster most of them for the next podcast or the strategy session that we schedule with you guys. So uh, I asked the question about what services can go mobile, and I have some thoughts. So I have a couple of tidbits for people who are listening. You guys have an incredibly successful business that's scaling, and again, it's you guys are sort of like you know the New England Patriots 3 years ago. You got Tom Brady. Like, how do we make sure we win the next Super Bowl? Some people are just like trying to get to the NFL, right? Actually, they're trying to get out of high school, using the football analogy for mobile. So one, I think all of the things that you're thinking out loud about are strategy questions for your dealership and your mobile and how mobile plays into that. And so that's really I think the strategy is number one. And it drives my sales guys crazy because when I talk to leaders in dealerships, I'm like, what's your strategy? And and we'll talk for an hour about why are we doing mobile. And it's not, I don't want to talk about the feeds and speeds of my software. Like we have great software and it works. Like I'll prove it to you. I want to talk about strategy because the strategy is really, it tells you what lanes to go down. And the first strategy question is, are we doing consumer or are we doing fleet, right? You guys started fleet and you went to consumer, and there's a lot of reasons there. I think so. That's strategy question number one. And then question number two is, what's the goal with the fleet customer and what's the goal with the consumer customer? Because what you can do on fleet is much larger, and their tolerance for stuff like mistakes, vehicles being ripped apart in their driveway, etc., is much higher, right? So if you're at, an Amazon DSP and there's 200 vans there and 20 of them are down for whatever reason, they just want them up, and they want them up at a fair price, and they want them up by 7 a.m. We run some Amazon business, and we've talked to you guys about this. I've done transmissions mobily, right? Jack it up, drop it out, scrape it across the driveway, left an imprint, put some fluid on the ground, right? Bought a Jasper, came back the next day, put the Jasper in. Not pretty. Van was up in 2 days, right? Customer loved me. Fleet customer, commercial location, right? Again, the right fleet customer, the right problem. I wouldn't do a transmission on a consumer's driveway, right? For sure. But like I think your comment of, we're going to take a dash apart and do whatever we need to behind the dash. It's sort of dependent upon the customer. Um, I think there's a lot of misperception in the dealer world, especially, and Richard, my apologies for picking on our generation. I think if you're of a vintage Carl Richard, half of us get the consumer-oriented digital world, right? Hey, I buy stuff on Amazon, it's delivered to my front door. I never went to the store. That's okay. And mobile's like a version of that. And then there's a bunch of us who like, no one, so I talked to a Porsche dealer about a month ago, and he's like, my customers don't want service done on their driveway. I'm like, how do you know that? I just know. And I said, okay. I said, I'm mature enough to not tell you you're wrong because it's your customer and your business. But I bet you, Benjamin, I can find a lot of your customers who want me to come to your driveway. And I said that to the guy. And he's like, really? You'd bet me $100? I said, let me ask you this question. How many of your Porsche customers have a mobile detailer come to their house in an old beat up pickup truck with a bunch of gear they bought at a pawn shop and charged $300 to detail your 911?
All of them.
He didn't answer the question. There was like this long pause. He's like, how do I answer this guy? He like backed me into a corner and I'm now wrong. And I said, look, I'm not here to like, I don't want to win with you. I want to talk about how we are successful, right? Like I talk a lot internally about success versus winning, and winning is like, uh, it's a score. You're wrong, I'm right. 3 points versus 2 points. And success is like all of us are like going in the right direction. And I said, look, I want you to think about what I said because I think there's a lot of customers that would take a Porsche oil change in their driveway. And then he went to like, well, what about oil spills? I'm like, well, oil spills, like you spill oil in your shop. He's like, not rarely. We have a beautiful shop. And he goes and tells me about his incredibly clean, like an operating room and for humans shop. I said, well, if your culture is operational excellence in the shop, just port that over to mobile. Like if you have a great shop and it's clean and your technicians do great work and they don't wreck stuff, like the reality is you touch cars and mechanics make mistakes. Like if you think your mechanics are perfect, then you clearly are not in business. And the same thing happens in mobile, but it can be a very clean mobile operation. And it's really about the customer. Like to your point, we're going to offer a mobile. If they don't want mobile, we'll offer pickup and delivery. If they don't want pickup and delivery, they come to the shop, right? And at the end of the day, it's like the customer got what they wanted. I'd love to offer a mobile, but I'm not going to jam my truck and my technician into their driveway if they don't want it for any number of reasons. Maybe they're having a wedding or a bar mitzvah or whatever it is at their home, and they just don't want the van there, right? I just want the vehicle out of my driveway and I want it serviced. But then maybe the next time they'll say, well, I'll take mobile or whatever it is. Or you have to explain it to them, right? And so It's just so interesting. Again, um, we're talking a lot about this internally, and I'd love to talk to you guys separate from this podcast about that because I think it's such an important management strategy discussion. And then just to get like I think I'm like so fired up to have you as a customer. Like you wake up in the middle of the night worrying about your mobile business. So welcome to my world. And we can certainly align on how to like help you sleep better by saying, look, what's the strategy? And like, hey, we're gonna do this for this customer and this for this customer. And again, I think at the high level, it's really what we do for consumers and how we interact with them is different than fleet. And then like let's start there. And then so there was strategy and then consumer versus fleet. And then I think it's really about your team, right? And what they can do. Um, and like the transmission thing, like I'm very proud of the fact I talk about it a lot. One year we did 20 transmissions. They were not Ford vehicles, they were some other brand, and they had a transmission recall, and we did it to solve the customer problem. It was hard, took a lot of effort. We made a lot of money on it because we're using these Jasper remans, but it was something we said, well, we're just not going to do that because it's too painfully disruptive to the system. And it actually affected other fleet customers because we were pouring so much effort in to get this thing done. So, in any case, let's talk about that some other time and move on to other topics. So, um, I've talked a lot to Richard about strategy and the mobile business. Addison, why don't you take over and talk to Daniel about the more tactical stuff that's going on there and some of the things you've seen that might be helpful to the rest of our community.
Yeah, absolutely, Carl. So thanks so much for the introduction. And for listeners, if you're first time tuning in, my name is Addison Lessing, Director of Partner Success here at Spiffy. My team, and specifically me, been working with the Duval team that we have here on the call for a little over a month now, working on getting the platform up with their operation. So appreciate being back here. And Daniel, you shared a really awesome story, and Carl, you sort of alluded to it. I immediately after hearing your story realized why we get along so well. It's because we've had a lot of those same experiences. You even talked about, starting a business shortly before the global economic crisis. I would say that the second worst time to have started a business was when I started one in December 2019, which was an event planning business. And there's a little bit of foreshadowing that you could imagine. It was around automotive events and stuff. That was not long for this world, unfortunately, through 2020. So I'm really getting why you and I really do get along so well. We've seen several sides of it. But hey, so I've seen a lot of your operation, and Daniel, especially for you, what I first question I want to ask is like, you just got into this, especially on leading the mobile side, starting back in February. If there's kind of a new operator coming in, someone that's a new service manager, new mobile manager, whatever that role may look like, you know, what would you tell them? Like, how does that compare to your traditional dealership role? If you're just getting into the mobile management role, like, what are the differences? What did you learn quickly? And what would be like a piece of advice you'd give someone that's a new mobile manager coming in to run their mobile side of business?
Um, well, I feel like you really just teed yourself up because what I would tell them, well, before you do anything else, contact Spiffy. um, I mean that. I just think that we so much of it really, because I believe we have the right team. We have good people that care. We have the customer base that are asking for the services that we have. And I don't think we really truly knew just how inefficient we were. We knew that there has to be a better way. But just as I mean, at our height of just support staff, we had 5 mobile advisors. We now have 2 with higher volume. And when we had 5, we didn't have, I would say, probably half the volume we're doing now. And it wasn't that we were like overstaffed. I would say we were probably understaffed for what we were doing. It was, I mean, just absolute mayhem when you walked into that mobile coordinator office that you've been in, is now vacated, by the way. It's just a big empty office with a bunch of desks that we're not using anymore. It was so reactive, any especially just keeping up with where, what technician is done, and getting payment was a big issue, which, not that Spiffy had anything to do with the getting payment portion, but it took so much off of us so we could focus on the things that we should be focused on, like getting payment after service, and being able to know when a technician is, to look at a screen and know when a technician is done. Or, we used to spend all day, every day with one phone call after another. I had a 9 a.m. appointment and it's 11 o'clock. Where are you guys? And now being able to, we're usually reaching out to the technician that's running late well before the customer's reaching out to us. So I just think back to all the things that cause the brain damage that we just aren't dealing with today, and we can finally start, looking on just how to scale this thing. Now, a month and a half later, we're like, oh no, we don't have enough vans on the road, and we've, just added, we've got guys in training. By the time September starts, we'll have 4 additional technicians on the road. We're, for the first time ever, it really just kind of started clicking. I think last Thursday, I sent our general manager, Will, and Richard a text and said, we are booked solid until next Tuesday. And I think their initial thought is like, well, you need to fix that. But to me, I'm like, we've never been in this I can't tell you how many days we have a team of, 25 at the peak, close to 30 guys that would all, I think they all pretty much had their first appointment for the day. And then, you walk into the office at 10 a.m. and they're all hanging out like, what are we doing? It's, to now have a book solid day for every one of these guys, and we can really look at our business and be able to know. We didn't even know before, like, when I think I identified pretty early based off of the amount of visits per day, just the total divided by techs. We have way too many techs and mobile vans on the road. Like, so what do we do with that information? And it wasn't, we got to get rid of a bunch of guys. It's like, the fact is, we got to make some hard decisions, or we got to ramp up business like really, really fast. And now for the first time, we know how to, we have the tools to look at that real data. So, I think you knew the answer to that question before you asked it.
Well,
I'm just kidding. I honestly say, like, if we would have, I can't imagine where we would be if we would have partnered with Spiffy from the beginning, when we just had those couple trucks when we got that first contract, So really excited about the future.
Dan, look, so hang on a second. I just want to share. It's a very common growth path in mobile where you start with, like, in your case, customer demand. I had the same thing like car washes. I started with, like, I had a lot of customer demand for detailing, and it was like screwing up my car wash. There's like too many cars sitting around. And so I started mobile to get the detail off property so we could run more cars through the car wash. And then it took off. And then it became like a problem. Like, God, like, just like, they just keep calling me for more business. And then at one point, and I'm the operator, like, I'm like the GM, and I'm running the mobile business. And then I got to like 3 vans, and I'm pulling my hair out trying to do what you described, which is optimize the business, control the technicians, deliver great customer service. And, my partner and I came from the software world, and, I'm like, in shorts and a polo shirt, soaking wet, going to meet him on a July day at a Starbucks to talk about our business. And I just sit down and I just bellyache about all of my mobile problems. And he's like, dude, the thing grew 100% in 4 months. We're onto something. He's like, let's fix the problems. He's like, this is the wrong conversation. We don't have problems. We have opportunity. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. But I'm running it, right? And when you're in the mix, you sort of miss that. And so I think it goes back to strategy and launch. You can, like, where you guys got to, like, you're in the 20s of vans, right? Like 20, 25 vans, you're running with like 5 mobile coordinators. And so you just throw people at it, right? Throw humans at it, build paper processes, use spreadsheets, and then you get to a point where like we need to get to the next level, right? And the next level is more profits, more efficiency. There's all these things that show up like you described, like how do I notify customers? One, how do I optimize schedules and routes so I don't have late technicians? Number one, like prevent the problem. And number two, like sometimes it happens, right? You take a wheel off and it's not replace the brakes, it's replace the axle, and now I got to go deal with the customer and all this other stuff, parts, etc. And so, and again, we're talking our book, like it's my podcast, so we'll tell you this. You got to start with software. We think we have the best software. Well, you start with this, again, strategy, leadership, people, all those things you said you had, and then the software really helps just scale that stuff, right? And it does the things that humans aren't good at, that are repetitive and follow up, and then it lets the humans go do the things that we're really good at, which is hire people, train people, care for customers, upsell, cross sell, right? All that sort of stuff. Make RO, make a $200 RO, $1,000 RO, et cetera. So great. It's a very common story. So I give you dispensation for your experience. You've found the light, and we're happy to have you as a client. Addison, back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Richard, I think you wanted to chime in there for a second, sir. So before I move on to the next one, please.
Yeah, I did, because your question was, what advice would you give someone that was just starting? And my advice would be, there's a couple, three key points here. And as y'all know, we're a Ford dealer, so Ford gives us money, that mobile offset money, which makes this thing a whole lot sweeter. But my advice would be is first question is, if you're going simply to open a mobile business to go make money, I think you need to rethink that. I think you got to look at it. The money making part is there, but it has to kind of be viewed from a retention part, in my opinion, because you're probably not going to make a bunch of money if you go out and do maintenance and light repairs. You can, and I love what Karl said, and I think that's an opportunity now for us for sure. And again, your product is helping us do that via the multi-point inspection piece of it, so we can have an opportunity to identify, then upsell in real time. But if somebody comes to me and says, "Hey, you guys are killing it," I want to ask that question: are you willing to invest the money and the time? Because and Daniel and I went through this. We kind of come from the same cloth, so to speak. Of we live in a flat rate world, and when Daniel first took over, he was losing his mind. We got to pay technicians flat rate, and you don't. And there's a lot of owners out there that they can't stomach that. They can't. It's like mentorship program in the store, right? We want to grow technicians until we put some in and pay them by the hour, and then we can't relate a flat rate hour to the cost of our labor. But again, testament to our company, they buy into that and they let us have the autonomy to do that. So, and I would tell you that's why we're very good at what we do in terms of growing technicians. So my advice in short is, you need to look at it from a retention standpoint. If you're just going to buy you a couple of vans to say I'm in the mobile program and I'm going to make bunches of money, you better rethink that. You better get your head right and we've all said this, but use your software out of the gate, because we would be light years ahead of where we are had we done that.
Richard, what you just said is exactly why I called Karl when I walked out of the dealership and said, these guys are awesome. Like that was verbatim. First thing I said to Karl when I walked out of Duval Ford was, these guys are awesome. And it's because of the way that you just said exactly what you just said. It's being willing to invest in the actual program. Look, I can give you all the best software in the world. We can tell you all the best practices in the world. But if you don't have the commitment to it, if you don't have the investment, and if you don't see what it can become outside of just the gross, which you will see gross on, but again, just outside of that, how many ROs or what's the gross, it is about the retention. I mean, we just did some studies recently, and I don't want to quote the data and be wrong here, but with a couple of the stores we work with, and their retention goes up by double-digit points when they introduce mobile service, right? And that's the customer that would have gone to Jiffy Lube, that would have gone to the Take 5, that would have gone somewhere else because it's less expensive, more convenient, whatever the deal may have been, or whatever the customer's perception would have been. But you guys said it actually earlier in this conversation, which is, we asked, like, how do we meet our customers where they are? And that's what brings them back to Duval Ford. That's what brings them back to dealerships that are offering mobile service. And it's not just for service or repairs or for recall or warranty. It's for their next new purchase because they know in their next vehicle purchase too that when they buy that brand new F-250 off the lot from you or that new Bronco or whatever it is, that they can count on you guys to come out and service it when it's time for it to be serviced. And so I really appreciate you saying that, Richard, because I think that that's something that dealerships as a whole and they're working on it. There's plenty of fantastic owner operators, GMs that we've worked with that get that and understand it. But for those that are really asking and wondering right now, from most perspective, like what's my ROI, what's my return? It's not just about that gross profit number, though it will be bolstered. It is about how you're going to retain those customers, how you're going to use that as a tool in your sales. I tell dealers all the time, it's like go tell your sales rep to start mentioning this. Go talk to your F&I office to have them start bringing this up in F&I when they're closing out sales. That is going to start making a huge difference, not just in your service lane, but for your sales department, for your BDC, for everyone throughout the organization. So that's really awesome. Look, Daniel, go ahead, Karl.
Yeah, so Daniel, two things for you to suggest to you to manage based on our experience with other brands. So we're the preferred software and hardware vendor for Hyundai. And we've been running several locations in a pilot program for coming up on a year, and now they're rolling it out across the country. And so we have this growing data set across one brand, that doesn't have a big fleet presence. I mean, they have some fleet, they sell cars into like Salesforce and that sort of stuff, but not as much as you as Ford. Um, and the most impactful thing that's come out of that data, and it's public data, so I'm not like speaking out of school, is um, for every 100 ROs mobilely, 19 are coming back to the shop within 60 days. So for the work you do in July, you could expect to see, uh, 20% round figures within 60 days in your shop at an RO value that is somewhere between 750 and $900 an RO, right? So that's a good, and it's the result of that. And this is so one, I'd start trying to look at that metric, and Addison can give you some reporting to sort of track that as you go forward. And then the metric which feeds that, right? The metric behind the feeder metric into that success is ensuring that your technicians are doing digital MPI in every service, right? They have to do the digital MPI in every service. And the tool that you have, our software, allows you to customize that digital MPI for the customer segment or the service that you're providing. So you can create a much more sophisticated digital MPI for like a fleet customer, right? You can create a simple MPI for a consumer, but there's sort of the sky's the limit on how you do that. And that obviously it allows you to standardize it across your team. And then you can get reporting on, hey, I sent 25 guys to the field. We did 100 ROs today. Did I get 100 MPIs, right? And it's really just if I get 100 MPIs, it's going to feed that recurring business to the rest of your shop. And so again, get with Addison about that, but we can get you reporting on that, and it's really that's what I call when I in sort of like my public writing on blog posts and on LinkedIn. It's the flywheel of mobile, and you guys talk about that. It's like, hey, let's go do a service, like make the customer happy. Let's get the MPI score. Let's get the CSI score up. Then they come back and they buy more stuff from us, whether it's fixed ops or variable and all that sort of thing. So, um, Addison wrote that down. It's his to-do list for next week.
Already on the list. All right. Um, but hey, look, in the interest of time, Daniel, I'll kick you one more question and then we'll give us a chance to wrap up here. One of the things that when we actually were just talking about it a little bit that we work with dealers who have existing. So we've talked a lot about dealers who are dipping their toes in. They've got, a van, they're trying to get started. When we worked with you guys already have a large scale operation that we're working with. And now the question that we have and the job that was daunting to me before we got started was, all right, how do we get these guys to the next level and make sure that we are scaling from where they are? So what I would ask for you, Daniel, is as you're looking ahead, what is the next sort of opportunity on your mind? I know you touched on a little bit around windshields in detail, but what's sort of your next opportunity on your mind for looking ahead in mobile service? You know, what's sort of your next step or your next thought on what you guys want to start looking at?
I you kind of glitched out there for a minute. I thought I lost internet, but I think you asked like you mean like next services that we don't offer now?
I would say next services or even just opportunity. Like I know you guys are doing some fleet work, but just where would you look ahead to where you want to target, whether that be types of services, where you want to go geographically or type of
I
customer?
want to get into the mobile detail business. I don't think I know our customers want it. We have, without even advertising, our fleet customers are asking for it. We have retail customers ask about it. And even seeing you know, the tools that you guys have that, before was, okay, well, I got to set up tire vans just got to do tires, or, the Escape can only do recalls. How do I do all that? And, you guys have really shown us how to, with the tools that you guys have, as well as like, maybe that's not, I can have a detail van with, the little, I forget what it's called, the little caddy thing that can
Easy
do
flow,
five,
yeah.
yeah, oil changes as well. Or, I can throw that thing in the back of an Escape. So I think just, from a service side, the detail is, and I think what keeps probably Ford dealers and makes them shy away from that. I think a lot of Ford dealers are only in this for that Ford participation money that Richard mentioned earlier. We're working hard to position that Ford money goes away tomorrow. Nothing changes for us. It's I agree with Richard. I don't believe, at least our approach of being a Ford dealer and it being about retention and customer experience and all of that stuff, it's not about being a huge profit center for us. We certainly want to cover our costs. And I think any customer would understand that. We're not a non-for-profit, right? Like, we need to cover our costs, but giving that next level experience of why can't a Ford dealer detail your car while they're doing your oil change? And no, it doesn't require sending two vans. But I mentioned about what I think the reason, and I don't know if any other Ford dealers are doing mobile detail, but if they are, it's scarce because that doesn't qualify to get that money from Ford. But I'm just like, so what? You know what I mean? Is that really all we're in it for? And the answer is no at Duval Ford. So what are we doing? You know what I mean? And it's and Richard's response will probably be like, what are you doing? What are you waiting for? But that's, to me, it's I think the detail thing is the easy next step. But I do want to look more into the windshield thing. Is there, opportunity there? Is there, I don't, I know some guys, have the key machine, and, we just don't have a lot of that business, but doggone it, when there's a need and we got to drive, an hour and a half to take care of a fleet customer to go pick up his key and bring it all the way back to the dealership to cut it and go all the way back to them. And, it's like, that happens a few times. It's like, okay, well, maybe if we had that tool and we had a key machine on a van, then we'd probably be a lot more intentional with keeping that van busy. And then also, that doesn't mean that it can only be a key machine van. You know what I mean? Which is, I think that's all the next level stuff for us, is how do we combine services out of one van? We finally got our tire van back up and running as of today. So, excited about that, and just trying to think outside the box of, what other services we can offer to our clients, just for that next level experience. I just really don't want them going anywhere else. How do we be the Amazon for mobile service and not just oil changes and
for anything, for anything. And that's one of the things I love about Daniel is he and I are wired the same way in that respect. If a client calls us, and I'll give you a goofy example, client buys a used vehicle from us. It's a different manufacturer. That vehicle happens to be under that manufacturer's basic vehicle warranty, still under warranty. We do not, when that client calls, we do not say things like, oh my goodness, that thing's still covered under XYZ warranty. You can take it straight there. We say, you bring it to us. We will be your advocate. That's who we are. And again, that's what sets us and Daniel certainly apart from the rest, because you've heard him say keys, windshields. It drives us crazy when we hear one of our folks go, oh, we can't do that. Why not? Why can't we do that? Let's go find a way to get it done.
Yeah, we don't have the we can't in our.
If this sounds extreme, but it's things that come to mind. If I'm door dashing food and they can ask me if I want them to stop and grab groceries on the way, like, think about that. What if our customers could select, you want us to stop and grab you some lunch on the way? Like, that sounds crazy, but think about that. Like, if we had the ability to, you know what I mean? Like a single mom stuck in the house with 6 kids, and like, you can click this option and we can stop and grab your freaking Chick-fil-A. Are you kidding me?
Hey, Daniel, 10 years ago, there were entrepreneurs who said that we're going to have 2-hour delivery and drone delivery to your backyard. And that exists today.
Yeah.
People mock them, and there's entrepreneurs today that say that, we're going to put data centers in space and we're going to mine the moon for materials because I don't want to screw up the national parks, right? And those are all sort of big ambitions, but there's been a lot around that. And so, look, in summary, we're so excited to have you as a customer. I have lots of ideas about car wash detail and keys and all other stuff, and I'd love to maybe come down and talk to you guys, fence a half a day or something, come down and talk to you guys about it. We have some really interesting ideas about how to test it so you can build some internal ROI before you go spend money on it. And so we could talk through that. Some of them are pretty aggressive, some of them are less aggressive. Again, your culture, you choose what you want to do, but we've tried them. Addison and I have been like side by side on running some of them, and we've won. We've had ties and we had a couple losses, and we'll tell you about all those wins, ties, and losses so that you can avoid the zeros and choose the ones. But we're so proud to have you as customers. Thank you so much for sharing your success and your personal history with our audience. And we're just like so excited to be along with you on your journey to going from 20 vans to 30 vans to 40 vans to 50 vans to dominating North Florida and mobile.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. And I'd also like to say, Karl, thank you guys for participating in this past Orlando Parts and Service Club meeting. We can't do what we do there without you guys. We raised well over $70,000, I think, this year for the scholarship fund. And we're looking forward to you guys being with us next year back in Tampa.
Yeah, my pleasure. If you got more of those, please give us a call, Richard. We're very supportive of those things. Thank you. All right. Hey, my name is Karl Murphy. I'm the CEO and founder of Get Spiffy, and I'm here with Addison Lessing and the leadership team from Duval Ford in Jacksonville, Florida. And this has been another episode of the Mobile Service Playbook podcast. We will see you out in the field. Have a great day and be safe.